Welcome to Envizion More. Here, we dig deep into the insights of first-generation wealth builders, unearthing stories of passion, resilience, and relentless vision. Your host is Wayne Wagner Jr., founder of Visionary Wealth Management. So sit back and dig in. It's time to envision more.
This is the Envizion More podcast, where we are exploring wealth accelerating ideas for wealth accelerating families. So this podcast is for first generation wealth builders that are trying to build multi-generational wealth. And what are the mindset shifts that need to go on to do that? Today is an exceptionally special day for me because today this is my dear wife, May Wagner, going on 30 years together. And so she's been my life partner, high school sweethearts, and all the rest, and we're writing our own history while we do this together. So while we do life together. So May, thank you so much for being here, for putting up with me for almost 30 years now, and for being willing to jump on the Envizion More podcast today.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Actually privileged to be able to make the Envizion More podcast. And I'm very proud of you and how everything has evolved over time, business-wise, and just the way the Lord's really blessed us and led us. And I feel like this is just another feather in the cap to be on a podcast with you. So thanks.
Well, it's this is a special. I think it's a special time for both of us. We're at a newer season of life where most folks like us, our kids are 19 and 22 and starting to feel like empty nester, but really in many ways we're kind of downshifting and accelerating at this stage, and our kids are really involved. And so part of our journey is kind of the mistakes we've made and the lessons we've learned. You know, we found out that there were some things in there that really did give us a good foundation to grow with our kids. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but why don't we start with kind of our story? Don't give the bloody details of how we started, but let's just say for now and forevermore, May Wagner is and always will be the best I can get. So we all know this, and this is inside history for us. But the whole world needs to know that May Wagner is the best and will always be the best that I can get. So I'm grateful for her and grateful for now over 30 years of history together. So, but May, why don't you start us off? Give us a little bit of the story from your perspective.
I guess I'll start with a little bit of history of who I am. So I was one of 5 kids. I was a PK, pastor's kid. My dad pastored churches in the area for over 25 years. And then after 25 years, when I was around the age of 10, he decided that he wanted to go into more of an evangelistic work. And so he gave up the pastorate, and then we started traveling the world, doing missions work. They would take me out of school for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and we would go to Honduras, or we would go to Barbados, or we would go to, and that doesn't sound like a mission field, right? Barbados, Jamaica.
I was thinking that.
But it was the other side of the island. Okay. That's the side of the island that, the tourists don't see. Right. So we spent time in Guyana, South America, and in Brazil. And all the while I would take my schoolwork with me. I was going to a Christian school at the time, and they would just pile up, give me all my assignments for the next 3 weeks, and I would work on stuff while we were away. So growing up as a PK's kid was tough. My mom and dad were very conservative. You didn't go to movies, you didn't dance, you didn't drink. I wasn't allowed to wear shorts. I did sneak that. I used to put shorts in my gym bag and take them to school so that I could wear shorts in gym class, just like everyone else. And then I would change out of them before my mom picked me up.
I bought you a pair of pierced earrings for your graduation. Yeah. I think I started a war in your house.
We weren't allowed to have pierced ears. And the day that I turned 18, Wayne bought me earrings for my 18th birthday. And my mom and dad were like if they could breathe fire, they would have. But anyway, and I went and got my ears pierced. So that was kind of like my little rebel at 18 years old, my rebellion. But I mean, all in all, I am so thankful for the life of that they instilled in me, as far as like introducing me to Jesus Christ at a very early age. And we really did have a good family atmosphere. My dad, while he was pastoring, he was trying to live on a pastor's salary, but he couldn't. And so he had to be creative. And so he opened up it was called the muffler shop. And he was a mechanic. And that was something that he just, as he grew up in a family where they were very mechanically inclined. My grandfather used to work on the railroad. And back in the day, the railroad was, what brought everything to the city or the town. My dad tells the story about how the railroad that my grandfather worked on was very influential in bringing electricity to their house. And they were one of the very first people like in that town to get electric. So he grew up in a very mechanically inclined family. And as a result, he taught my brothers how to also, I have 3 brothers, taught them how to do car mechanics. They worked on cars together. So he opened up a mechanic shop and he did everything, pretty much self-taught. And it was successful. And my brothers worked for him. My one brother went and got his welding certification. And after working for my dad, went and worked for a equipment company that would install pharmaceutical vats. And then all that without a college degree, just what his daddy taught him. So, but my dad was also an entrepreneur. He looked for ways to make money. And so he started buying apartment buildings. He bought 2 apartment buildings. There were 6 units between the 2 of them. And he was using that as a means of income. And then when he left the pastorate, we really had nowhere to go as far as, we had to leave the parsonage, had to move out. And so we moved into my dad, also the construction worker, joined 2 of those apartments into one. And we lived on the 2nd floor of an apartment building, probably for maybe 7 years or so. I think I was about 17 when they finally bought a house. Yeah. And that's a story too. My mom and dad found this Victorian house that was like $40,000. And my dad's like, I'm going to buy it. And he took my mom to see it. And we were standing in the living room and looking, like you could see all through the next 3 stories up to the sky.
Yep.
And I remember my mom being like, oh, great. It's another one of dad's projects. But he did. He renovated that house, and then they lived in that house for, 15 years maybe.
Yeah. But I had some blood equity in that property too, because that was right around the time I was trying to impress them, and you and I were dating. And it was like the 2 big projects I was involved in there was a backyard that was like 10 foot high of just complete thicket. And I was doing landscaping. So I used my tools to come in and clean that up. And then we ended up renting jackhammers and stuff to take that gigantic above ground, in-ground pool. They had this, it was like, 50 feet long and 30 feet wide or 25 feet wide. And it was like built 9 feet out of the ground. Then we had to use backhoes and jackhammers and bobcats with jackhammers. And when it was the middle of winter, we were trying to tear this thing out. So I'm just trying to impress my future father-in-law.
We weren't married at that time. I thought we were married.
We might have. Was that? They were getting ready to, been later.
Yeah, they were getting ready to move to Williamstown. I was just sitting here thinking, like, if we hadn't been married at that point, and you had done all that work with him, he probably would have maybe had a slightly different answer when you went to ask for my hand in marriage. But
I wasn't going to go there, but you just opened that way. So that's your story to tell, dear.
It's my story. It happened to you.
Well,
I didn't even know it happened until I had a ring on my finger.
My father-in-law I was raised Baptist. My father-in-law was a Wesleyan pastor, and there's significant doctrinal differences between those two denominations. And so, I had been dating his daughter for a few years. We're getting serious. We're gonna, we really want to get married. And so I go to ask for May's hand in marriage. I spent 3.5 hours discussing doctrine with my future father-in-law. And then the resounding answer, yes, that I got was, well, you kids are going to do what you want to do anyway. I can't stop you. So that was,
and we did.
and we did, right. And Dad came back later and apologized and said, I had some preconceived notions of what Baptist boys were and my expectations, and you have exceeded them. So I did.
My mom and dad several times over the years apologized for how they originally treated Wayne and said they were wrong. And my mom still lives with us. She's going to be 90 this year. And she admires you, Wayne.
I know.
So.
Yep. And it's, and candidly, for what your mom and dad came from. And I mean, I just, your mom and dad were always just so creative financially, living frugally. And I think that having that as kind of passed down almost genetically to you helped us in those early years, because once we got married, I would say one of the things we got super, super right early on was not having kids right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Neither one of us was finished our college degree when we got married. It took me another year. It took you another few years of doing part-time college to finish up. But we didn't have kids for like 7.5 years after getting married. And that's more the norm, more typical today. We still see that we grew together, forged our bonds, made mistakes, figured out that we could truly lean on one another. And it wasn't, I'm hurting, I need you, and you're tied down taking care of the kids. And so it was truly, I learned to be able to lean on you, that when I came home broken, when I came home needing someone to be there for me emotionally, spiritually, physically, you were able to truly be there and pour into me. And I think vice versa. I hope vice versa. I think that was one of the things we got really right early on. And it's not to say you can't do it when you've got kids early on, but our experience, I think, was that 7 years gave us the ability, like we were just forged in steel. Like there was no question coming after. Once we had kids, there was no losing one another. As much as many situations as we've been in where we've kind of lost ourselves, I don't think there's ever been a threat that we were going to lose each other. And I think that was forged early on. Because
now, I would say our marriage has become stronger because we've had to lean on each other.
Yeah. And learning that, you made sacrifices in those early years. You were at Zeneca Pharmaceuticals, and then you left. And why don't you tell some of that story of kind of how, because that you really led us into environments that allowed for the fuel for our future acceleration. But it was you really leading that in that season.
Yeah. So I guess the credit to the beginning of all that goes to my sister and my then sister-in-law, Deanna. She worked for ICI Pharmaceuticals. And when I graduated high school, in fact, it might even been before I graduated. I think I might have been 17. I got my working papers. New Jersey, that's a thing. You got to have working papers if you're under the age of 18. And that summer, I started just doing temp work. She got me in the Zeneca at the time. So ICI and Zeneca merged at one point, and Zeneca at the time had their own temp network. So they hired their temporary office staff outright. They didn't go through an agency, which I think it was a blessing because it gave me a foot in. I knew the people in the HR department right away. Right. So I would work there during summers. I, would say, hey, I'm available such and such a time. And they would always have me booked out. So I'd work there summers. If I was coming home from college, I would say, hey, I'm going to be home for fall break. These are the dates. And I would always have, a full schedule of work when I was home. And that was good. So Christmas breaks, everything. So through a weird series of events, I decided to quit my college career 2.5 years in. And because I think my fiance was getting cold feet. And
Trying to figure out if you were the best I could get.
That's exactly what was going on.
Yes.
So anyway, but I didn't learn that until years later. And I was like, are you kidding me? Yes. Look at me, Mr. Wagner. You're the best. This is the best you can get. So anyway.
And I am so happy and blessed.
So anyway, when I decided to do that, I called up my connection at AstraZeneca or Zeneca at the time. And I was like, look, I'm going to need a full-time job. So if you have any full-time assignments, let me know. I'm coming home. I'm getting married in 7 months and I need to work. So they did. They put me in a long-term temporary assignment in the training and development part of human resources. And my degree was in psychology. And so they felt like it was a good fit, teaching, psych, I don't know, leadership classes, all of that. So I worked as a training assistant. So I would assist the trainers. I would set up the rooms. I would get their materials ready. I would schedule all of the classes and people into the classes. So after that, I was hired full-time into the admin side of HR. And that's where I really learned more about the inner workings of human resources. And then they were like, hey, would you like to finish your degree? We'll pay for it. And I was like, why did you not tell me this when I was 17? I would have absolutely just come to work for you.
Because we don't want to pay for the whole degree. We want to pay for the last piece of it.
So I did. I finished my degree at Wagner while I worked full time. And that was such a blessing. My parents were so scared I wasn't going to finish my degree because I quit to come get my MRS degree.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a little point of contention. So not only were they like, no, you guys are going to do what you want to. And we were like, and yes, we did. I quit college. I came home. I did what I wanted.
No idea why your parents didn't like me early on.
So, but it worked out because a year and a half later, when Wayne graduated from college, he went to try to get a job inside of, his area of degree, and it didn't work out. He was going to be a secondary math teacher, and they wanted to pay him like $12,000 a year, and we were like, yeah, we can't live on that. So
yeah,
he was like,
I was running a landscaping business and working construction part-time and making 3 or 4 times that. So it was the idea that now I have a college degree and I'm going to take a 2/3 pay cut. That didn't work.
So he says to me, I need a job. And I'm like, let me talk to my friend Terry in human resources and see what she's got. At least it'll be something like to hold you over until you find what you want. So sure enough, it was like maybe the next week you were hired and put down in the marketing department.
Oh,
and it was marketing, right?
Yeah. It was marketing department. I was brought in to put together PowerPoint presentations and operate Excel spreadsheets for. And it was fascinating because it was like, today we think about kids are so tech savvy and phone savvy and they run circles around us. Well, at the time, the people in their 40s had no idea how to operate, PowerPoint or Excel. And so I was a 23-year-old kid who, right out of college, who had, had just a little enough more expertise in those areas than the folks who needed the services. Yeah.
Well, and just let's take a minute here, because when I was in high school, 17, 18 years old, Windows, Microsoft Windows, all of that did not even exist. Right. So I remember working at Zeneca and it was an MS-DOS screen. That's how we typed our letters. You learned all the special characters and all the special keystrokes to make something bold or underlined or to start a new paragraph. And that's how we did everything. So go forward, like what, 4, 5 years, all of a
Yeah.
sudden Microsoft Windows,
Yeah.
Excel. I mean, imagine, I mean, now, like, it happened so fast and we were part of it, and so it wasn't so weird to us. But now
Yeah.
when you think about it, that was a huge leap of technology, like in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then you have all these people in this big organization that you have to like bring along, technology wise, while they're, head deep in their jobs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I was working for a team that the woman on that team, her name is Sarah, and um, she was like a whirling dervish. She was just, so busy, so in the weeds all the time. And she would start giving me slides at 11 p.m. for a 9 a.m. presentation. And I'd work on those slides till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then, be back there and then sit in the room when I see a misspelled word on slide 14. And I'm just, oh man. So,
She was just happy she had someone to make those slides for her because she didn't know how to do it.
yeah. Well, it's the ability to do it versus you shouldn't be paying somebody what they're paying her to put together a PowerPoint, right? So
True.
it's her job to come up with the content and have the expertise and the experience and the wisdom on what needs to go on those slides. It's the muscle power, it's the brawn behind it that puts that stuff together. So, yeah.
So that's kind of how you got your foot into the pharmaceutical industry. Maybe you should
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Well, I spent 10 months at Zeneca. Was some fascinating, things happened there. It was the first time I ever had to wear a collar on my shirt. I think about a month in, it was deluge pouring down, raining, and somebody broke down in the lane trying to pull in the parking lot. So I did what I was trained to do, which was you jump out and help a woman in need. And so I jumped out and pushed her car into the parking lot. I come into work looking like an absolute drowned rat. I am soaked. I have nothing to, and Sarah says the gym downstairs has a dryer. Go downstairs, ask for a couple of towels, throw your clothes in the dryer, and next time drive around the person and just get to work on time. And
Wow.
because, and I mean, you see her point. I mean, she's expecting me there and to be there, and I'm just doing, the next thing I see in line. Again, not afraid to work hard, but maybe probably not, working very smart at that stage. So, but it was so the fact that Zeneca had a gym and had a dryer to get me dried out was a blessing. But I spent 10 months there, learned a ton, did work part-time for Sarah in that department for some of that time, part-time in another department that was kind of evaluating the contracts and contract pricing and that kind of thing. Got pulled into, got kind of opened my mouth in a couple of meetings and helped contribute to fixing some data problems that were in some of their forecast modeling for one of the drugs. And that led to, ending up in the room with, VP of sales, VP of marketing, so the people that I was so inept and naive. I had no idea who these people actually were. And here they are, VP of sales, VP of marketing, VP of business development for a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. I'm 23 years old, and I'm like, hey, I think I've got an answer for that. Let me have the whiteboard for 5 minutes. And meanwhile, the people who know me in the room are like, what are you doing opening your mouth? Sit down and shut up. But ended up being able to actually contribute to some of that because of the math background. So it was actually really, it was a neat time to build some of those early relationships. But we were, you and I got married without a huge plan. We didn't have a grand design for where we wanted to be or what we wanted to become. But you took some steps there during that 7-year window that really set the foundation for liftoff. So why don't we transition out of Zeneca and
So I knew that if I wanted to have babies, I was going to have to figure out how to replace my income in some sort of way. Well, I think first of all, what happened was you stopped working for AstraZeneca and made the move over to financial
Yeah, you're
advisor.
right. I did. Yeah.
And I think when that happened, we started to see kind of like, oh wow, there's not a cap on our income anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Although it sure felt like that in those early years. Those early years were hard.
there was definitely a cap when you were trying to survive.
Yeah.
But during this time, I thought, you know what, I want to just investigate, like starting something on the side. And so I answered a work from home ad. I'm sure you guys have all seen them. And this girl, her name was Roxana Shivan, and she said, hey, I'm going to send you a decision package. And it's so funny because I think about this now and I know like what this company is doing now, and a decision package is an ancient thing, but that's what we did. So they sent me a videotape of these people talking about health and nutrition. And I got really interested. I was specifically interested in just how they were talking, about dreaming and setting goals and, just making your habits part of your goal setting. And anyway, so I answered. It was, I was like, okay, sign me up. So I joined Herbalife back in, I think it was about 95. Would it have been 95?
We got married in 94. So
no, it's probably like 96, 97 then.
Yeah.
So, and little did I know that Roxana was the sister of Brad Harris. And Brad Harris is a big name in Herbalife still to this day. If you mention the name Brad Harris to anyone who knows anything about Herbalife, they're like, wow. So, and it, just sitting here talking about all this, Wayne, like the Lord just really had his hand in everything, right? So pharmaceutical company, gateway into, your work with the pharmaceutical reps. I answer an internet ad about work from home and I get coupled with the sister of this big time, Herbalife guy who's got a lot of methods and a lot of systems in place for training. He's doing big training calls, and so, and I felt like they were very intentional relationship wise.
Yeah.
And I know they were making money but I never felt like it was about the money.
Yeah.
So
that was the first group in our world who really started painting a picture and just calling people to become more.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, everything that we talk about today in terms of envisioning more for our clients and for the families we're working with and for the people in our sphere, all of that is downstream from, Herbalife trainings where they were calling people to, and it goes back to, I mean, they would quote Jim Rohn like every single day, but you'd hear over and over and over again. And we talk about it over and over and over again. Success is something you attract by the person you become, and the becoming comes before the success. And so you can't control when the success will show up, but you can control whether you are doing the daily habits of becoming someone who is attractive to success, so that which success will be attracted to. And so, and that was, I mean, I would go to those meetings as a financial advisor, and like I was being taught sales techniques. I was being taught to work my butt off, cold calling, working my way in to get referrals and those kinds of things. These people were talking about, we're challenging you and challenging me to, you need to be reading the books. You need to be doing the daily habits. You need to be journaling. You need to be doing the things that are going to help you become successful.
I think that was the first time in my life where somebody introduced me to the concept of the first thing that you do in the morning and the schedule that you make for the day and the things that you get done, your to-do list, are all geared towards the end result of your goal. And so and about making healthy habits, right? Just a little bit every day can go a long way in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And I think it has helped us like throughout our marriage just to be able to set goals and work towards them, because we realized that people set a goal and they're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, you got to work backwards. You got to set your goal and then work backwards. What do I have to do to get to that goal? And what do I have to do to get to that? And what do I have to do to get to that? And here's where I am. Yeah. So what can I do today to change whatever it is I need to change in a small way to get me closer to the next step?
Yeah.
And so I think that was very helpful for me. So I traveled with Herbalife. We went to success training seminars all over the country.
STS.
Yeah, STSs, and went on trips. I got to the point where I had over 100 distributors under me. I was bringing home like $5,000 a month, which back in 1998 was huge.
Right.
It was more than what I was making at AstraZeneca. And so
we're putting together yard signs in our garage, you know, nailing them together and then going out on Friday night, you know, and putting them up and figuring out which townships would actually start finding you if they were up on Monday. So you'd have to go out and put them out on Friday night and take them up on Sunday night. So you got the message out over the weekend.
So like, if you guys have ever seen those work from home signs, yeah, that was me, or it was part of what I was doing.
Yep.
And I was working from home, you know, but at the time I was working from home and also going to work every day, just trying to like figure out if I can make a go of this. And then not long after that, you made a big business move, like right in the middle of that.
Yeah. Well, what do you remember about Kansas City other than us leaving our dress clothes at home?
So it's Kansas City where Brad pulled you aside, right?
Yeah.
So Wayne and I actually got asked to lead part of a training, and we packed our garment bag with our fancy clothes in it and got on the plane and realized that we left our fancy clothes at home. And we were going to be on stage in front of, I don't know how many people, Wayne, were there. A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
So we get to Kansas City and we're like, we need the closest men's warehouse right away. And they were able to get Wayne a suit and get it tailored like within 24 hours. And that was kind of like, I think
we walked out of there in 90 minutes. They did it on site.
Did they?
Yeah.
So it was so long ago.
I bought my suit from Men's Warehouse for like 25 years after that. I was just like, I'm never leaving these guys.
So and then I went, of course, it was easier for me. I just went to the store and bought a dress or whatever. But
right.
And we did a training there, and we ended up later that night after the training, we ended up in Brad Harris's hotel room with a bunch of other people. We were just hanging out. It was kind of cramped, actually. It was a small hotel room. And so Brad had challenged me to start really reading books. And, my dad read books, but they were mostly theology books. And so I had never been introduced to like leadership books and things that might be outside of like, say, religious books. And so I started reading. I read Failing Forward. I read Eat That Frog. I read Who Moved My Cheese. I read Developing the Leader Within You, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And so it really got me thinking and talking and dreaming about, what could happen if we just applied these principles to our life and to our relationships. And so in that hotel room suite, Brad pulled Wayne aside. Do you want to tell this? Why don't you tell this part?
Well, Brad pulled me aside and just said, Wayne, you seem like a wonderful couple. Your wife is going to go very far if she sticks with this. I know that you're doing the financial planning thing, and that's your full-time gig. But at the rate May is going, frankly, she has the potential to make more money than you. And so you guys are going to have to make a decision at some point about what, where you're going to lean, or if you're going to still try to do two things or choose one. Here's the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that May is going to accelerate her growth. Her mindset is going to continue to evolve because she's reading books. And if you don't keep up with her, if you don't read the same books, if you don't meet with her in the pages of those books and develop the vocabulary and develop the ideas and the mental, mark the mental milestones and growth spots, she's going to outgrow you. And if she reads 50 books a year for the next 3 years and you don't read any, you're not going to be married to the same woman that you married, and she will have outgrown you. And I don't want that for you guys. I don't want it for you because too often he said too often in Herbalife, we see one spouse gets it and gets on the elevator and the other one stays on the ground floor. And eventually they get divorced because they've just grown too far to continue together. And so he gave me the list of 50 books and said, I'm challenging you to read the same books, meet your wife in the pages of these books and start writing your own story. And, that was like, I didn't want to lose. Like by that time I realized May was the best I could get. And so I didn't want to lose her. Like if she was going to grow, I wanted to grow with her. And so I didn't want to grow her to outgrow me and then not need me anymore. And so it was marriage prophylactic, protection to protect my marriage to read these books. And so because Brad Harris said so. So and at the time, what did I know? But that was, one of the first books I read was one of John Maxwell's Laws of Leadership. And in that book, he talks a lot about the law of the cap. So I started dreaming a little bit. May had these dream boards at home. She like literal pieces of
poster board.
Yeah, poster board with actual pictures of this is the house we're going to live in, and we're going to have this kind of car. We're going to go on these kinds of trips, and it was actually on poster boards hanging in her office because that's how she would say, all right, I got to call 5 more people, and then I was like, wow, some of that stuff applies at my office as a financial advisor, because I need to be motivated to call 5 more people too. And so I started doing the same thing, but it was really May leading the way there. And, I started having conversations with my boss about, me really dreaming about, well, as I grow as a financial advisor, as I have a vision for my practice, as I have a vision for how to help clients. And, I talked about this on another podcast with a guy named Brad Johnson a couple of months ago. And he, my boss said, you're not a big enough fish to ask these kinds of questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the law of the cap. John Maxwell talks about that in his book. This is the law of the cap. This is the cap. This guy just capped me. And I know it and I can put words to it. And I went home that day and I told May, I said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing a year from now, but I won't be working for him. And it was like, I literally didn't know what I was going to be doing, but I knew I wouldn't be working for that guy because he just put a cap on me because he said, he told me you're not a big enough fish to ask the kinds of questions, meaning you're not a big enough fish to be able to dream. That's what I interpreted and took from that. So, yeah. And so that's when, in 2020 or in 2000, October 2000, we stepped out and started, what would become Visionary Wealth Management. So,
and when that happened, it was kind of a scary break for us. There's a lot of scary things that happened because your old boss didn't like the fact that you were leaving.
Yeah.
So he, so I believe it was October of 2020. We were getting ready to go on a trip, and
we just gotten back. We just gotten back. Yep.
And basically, you got fired.
Yep.
I mean, the Lord has all worked it out since then, but that's what happened. And then we found out we were pregnant with CJ. It all happened in the same month.
Congratulations. Yep. Yay. Yep.
So.
Yeah, it was all pretty rapid, and I had a dear friend of mine, Ward Keever, who was helping me make the transition to being an independent financial advisor, and he was financially helping some things, and I'm sure he had some just head shaking moments. So let me get this straight. You get fired, you show up in October instead of December when we transition, and by December you're announcing that you're pregnant. Okay. It's like cart horse one before the other.
It might not have been CJ that we were pregnant with because we lost one.
Oh, you're right.
She was born in August, so.
Well, it all did. It wasn't that first pregnancy though that we lost because we lost that first pregnancy right around July 4th because we were
Yeah,
down.
you're right.
So
You're right.
yeah.
So it was CJ.
Yeah. And on that note, let me just say a word to anyone who has lost a pregnancy. Um, you're not alone. I know that in those moments and on your journey, it feels like you're all alone. And I would want to say to you that you're not alone, and you don't need to feel alone. Don't need to feel isolated, that you can't talk about this with others, because there's more people in your sphere who have experienced that same loss and that same tragedy than you'll ever know about. So have hope, have courage, and don't be afraid to share that part of your story too.
That one was really rough for us because we had waited for so long to get pregnant.
Yeah.
We had relatives that were saying things like, I hope you don't wait too long.
Yeah.
You know, and then we got pregnant and we lost it at 10 weeks. We hadn't even told our parents. We called them from the hospital.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
But the Lord blessed us with Sierra and then Bryce.
Yep.
So,
yeah, so we've got the kids we were intended to have.
and one in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. So, May was doing Herbalife. I was doing, we did ultimately have to make a decision about which horse we were going to back, as it were. Were we going to continue doing financial planning and Herbalife, or were we going to back one of those horses? And there was a season there where I legit thought I was going to leave financial planning and jump into Herbalife with you. We were envisioning that and dreaming about that.
I was scared. You were scaring me with that.
Yeah.
Because then I was like, then all of our apples are in one basket.
Right. Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But in 2000, we went out, started what would become Visionary Wealth Management, and it took us a few years to get things squared away and accelerating. But we from 2000 to 2007, we went from $120,000 in revenue to $750,000 a year in top line revenue, and then in 2008. All within a really quick 2-month period of time, we ended up taking over a Christian school. So the school that we both graduated from, was the church that had it was going to close it. And I had put together a proposal to take it out from under the church, set up a separate nonprofit entity with a separate board, and operate it as a standalone entity. And we were on like 11:30 on a Sunday night. I get a phone call to say, "You really think you can do this? Because if you can, you got it. You got like 45 days to set up the nonprofit and take it over, because July 1st, you either take it or we close it." Man, that was, and that led to a 13-year part of our journey that was some of the most amazing stories, some of the most faith growing, faith exploding parts of our story, and oh my gosh, the most painful, agonizing parts of our story, and everything in between. And we learned so much during that season. School ultimately closed in 2020, and there's another school now starting up on that same property. But the business entity still exists. We actually transitioned the business entity to new leadership last year. But gosh, that was that was a painful part of our journey. And when I said early on here that there were times where we lost ourselves, but we never lost each other. That 13-year journey, we lost ourselves for a while there. So, and May, what are a couple of takeaways for you? Where do you see that we would do things differently today if we had a mulligan on that season?
So I'm a doer. I like to just constantly be doing something. And I feel like the school really fulfilled my need to constantly be doing something. And I know for a fact, to my own detriment. So there were a lot of things that happened that were amazing. We made great investments, I feel, in some of the kids that to this day, still Facebook us or Instagram us and say how grateful they were for us. We had somebody just yesterday actually say that on one of our posts. And so I have to view that as we were where God wanted us, and we were affecting the people that God wanted us to have an effect on and lead. But I will say that I had a problem saying no. And I don't know why. I think later in counseling, it came out that I am a people pleaser. And so I wanted to make people happy and I wanted to get things done. And so if it meant staying up until midnight and getting up at 5 a.m., that's what I would do for weeks on end to get everything done. And like I said, it was to my own detriment. I would put on like 60 pounds. Mm-hmm. Over those 13 years. My health was bad. During this, my father passed away in 2015. And then I had a brother pass away in 2016. And then in 2020, right before COVID started, I had another brother pass away. And I think I just buried myself in my to-do list. I didn't take time to really process all of that. And so when COVID hit and I had nothing to do, it was like I was a mess. And Wayne, you said to me at one point, I don't know what's going on here, but you need help. You need to talk to somebody. And through that process, I think looking back, there were so many things that happened at the school that were great. We were where God wanted us to be. I sometimes wonder if maybe we stayed a little too long. Mm-hmm. And that was our own pride. Like maybe we should have handed over the reins sooner. We learned that now looking back. But there were a lot of things that went on. And one of the things was that, our son Bryce was bullied, greatly bullied for years. Yeah. And I think that because I lost myself in my to-do list and I was so focused on the goal and making the school profitable, I felt like if I were to pull my kid out, that felt like failure. Like, why could I not create something where my child would thrive, my own child?
Yeah, right.
And then also, why am I spending all my time, sweat and tears, investing into this thing that is beating up my child, right? So I was so conflicted. And in 2019, we made a decision to pull Bryce out. We didn't know the school was going to be closing the next year at that point. But we were talking about regrets before we came on here. And one of my biggest regrets was not putting my kids first. Like I lost myself and I also did not put my kids first.
Yeah.
And you can be so like overwhelmed by a goal that you like put your blinders on. And I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. And so that's what I do. Right. So I'm like, there's the goal. I'm going for it. Don't get in my way. If you do, you got to sit down. You just move over, because I'm going for what I want.
And you're married to an 8 who's bringing the steamroller with him. So,
and I did that to my kid though.
Yeah.
Right. Because that whole idea of pulling my kid out of school was going to get in the way.
Yeah.
Of feeling like the school is a success. And, man, I regret that so much. Like I could have lost my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's heartbreaking. And thankfully, by the grace of God and the help of some counselors, we didn't. And he's thriving. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
That God protected us even through that. So, and, I look back at everything we went through, and even Bryce would say, and I think he has said on the podcast that he was on with you.
The one we have to reshoot.
Right. So like it became part of who he is. He wouldn't be who he is if he didn't have to go through that.
Yeah.
And that is so redeeming for me to hear him say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where that season even works into our story is that, so with the things that we're trying to tackle today in terms of starting businesses, growing businesses, taking other people along with us on this journey, one of them, and accelerating wealth through multiple generations. One of the crucial things that it will be impossible for us to duplicate is our own first 10 years of struggle, our own first 10 years of failure, skin knees, mistakes, blown decisions, missed opportunities. We can't duplicate that in our kids. And I think ultimately that's why, and what you and I would agree today is wrongheaded thinking. I think many families start with, well, the kid has to go spend that first 10 years making their own mistakes. They have to learn their own lessons. When the fact of the matter is, if we can accelerate them through those 10 years of lessons by sharing our own mistakes, I think that we set them up for better success. But there's still the missing piece of they haven't struggled. Mm-hmm. And so as painful as it is, and as much as you and I feel like, wow, we really dodged a bullet, that we didn't lose one or both of our kids in that process, the school also created what for our kids was really an adversarial environment for them to have their own season of pain. Mm-hmm. And that they made it through that, and now they're both thriving. But it's in some sense, my hope is that, and I have faith that that's going to be part of their narrative, that season of pain and frustration for them is actually part of what built the resilience in them, built the grit in them to be able to, and then that combined with us helping them accelerate and not spend 10 years learning all those lessons. Let's spend a lot less time in that. Let's start reading the books sooner. Let's start pouring in the data, pour it in the content earlier so mm-hmm. that you can accelerate more quickly out of the gate. So, that would be my hope that, for the good things that came out of the school, and sometimes it's maybe a lemons and a lemonade conversation, but I hope that season, it actually has helped build the grit and sustainability into our kids that they're going to need to ultimately go much farther than we ever will. Right.
Yeah. So. I mean, especially in CJ, I see, she is constantly doing something. And I know that she has picked that up from watching her mom and her dad constantly being involved in something, and I see that, and it's very admirable. Like, she can get so much done in a day. And I think that's just from her being like kind of at her side while we're getting these things done. And she was always the kind of kid that very compassionate, relational, outgoing. Right. And so that was like her thing. Whereas Bryce, he resented a little bit the fact that he was still in an environment where he was being bullied, and we were pouring all of our time into it. So therefore he wasn't getting our time and attention. Yeah.
And that's where I think we almost lost him. Right. Yeah. Was but he was finally able to articulate and say, I don't, like, Mom and Dad, you're pouring, because there was a decade there where we were pouring more than 50% of the gross revenue of the business into the school to keep the school afloat.
Yeah.
So literally, I couldn't hire people at Visionary Wealth Management. I couldn't grow Visionary Wealth Management beyond the two staff that I had, because we were literally taking over 50% of the revenue and mm-hmm. pouring it into the school to keep it afloat. And for Bryce saw that as, so let me get this straight. You are spending more than 50% of the revenue that comes into this house to supplement an environment and to pay for an environment that my bullies use every day to hurt me. Dad, like, many 4-letter words come to mind. Like, screw you. Like I can't believe you're doing this.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't like we were letting people bully him. We were trying to find a solution, talking to teachers, talking to administrators.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the other challenges we had, mistakes we made. I do think over time, at the end of the day, I think we thought, I certainly made this mistake. I thought that intentions could equal outcomes. Someone who shared a vision for a Christian school, that if we took the money problem away and we helped solve the financial issues, that suddenly people would just magically become high EQ contributors to a growth-minded environment where the teachers are becoming the best versions of themselves and the administrators are becoming the best versions of themselves, and kids are being treated fairly and equitably, and there's a mission focus and a cohesiveness and consistency in the way kids are treated from a discipline perspective. And I think that in retrospect, the two big mistakes on my end as the leader, as the chairman of the board for most of that time was, number one, we kept some people way too long. There were people that we should have said, you can't be on this team. And we should have said it a lot earlier than we did. And then number two, kind of a blind thinking that, well-intentioned people will somehow function as expertise with a level of expertise that they just don't have.
Yeah.
And I think, where that's transitioned today, you've mentioned some counseling, but I mean, for crying out loud, we spend across our organizations, we spend over $100,000 a year on training, counseling, coaching, therapy, those kinds of things. And we have questions about, are we spending enough? Are we being intentional enough to help all the people that we are trying to bring along with us on the team at this stage? And so now there just wasn't the resources at the time to spend that kind of money, but today that's a 6-figure annual spend. And, and we want to spend more on that because we recognize that creating an environment where people are being challenged and held accountable to having a growth mindset is giving them the tools for when there's areas of corrective behavior or thinking that need to occur. So I think those are two huge lessons from that season for me. So,
and these are all things we would not have been able to grow from if they didn't happen to us or happen around us.
Yeah. If we didn't live through it, right?
Yeah. So it's a journey.
Now today, I mean, so May in 22, you had been helping oversee the property of the school. You had overseen rental properties for us. You oversaw the tripling of the size of our residence, and that huge construction project. And in 2022, you became a real estate professional, and that has had some. We're now buying and acquiring and building a real estate portfolio under your leadership, and that's been amazing to see and amazing to watch. And I think there's some other things that have occurred over the last few years. I think we've gotten more intentional. We've tried to be intentional with the kids, but I think we've gotten even more intentional with them in terms of mentoring them and leading them. Can you maybe
bringing them into what we're doing?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Can you maybe talk to us, what are your thoughts on that piece of the journey at this stage, both kind of the development of additional businesses and kind of bringing the kids along with that in that vision with us?
Yeah. So CJ, I think we were on a trip somewhere, maybe 21. Was it in 21?
21. So our mid-year check-in.
Yeah.
And which, do you want to give maybe an outline of kind of how we approach,
Yes. So we do goal setting sessions with our kids. We go away in January of every year and spend a good 2 to 3 days at least focused on goal setting, kind of recapping the year before. How many books have they read? How's it impacted them? What are their goals for this year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? And just kind of keeping a pulse on what they're doing and where they're going, what they want to do. And then talking through with them, what I wish somebody would have done with me at the age of 18, 19, and 20 about, okay, well, this is the goal. How do we get there? And I think Bryce especially is amazing at setting goals. And he, set a goal to lose a lot of weight and lost a ton of weight. It was great. And so we're having this conversation at our getaway. And Wayne says, we want to buy X amount of real estate over the next 5 years. That's kind of one of the goals that your mom and I have. And CJ goes, so you're going to need a realtor. So why don't I go get my real estate license and I'll represent you. And so that is what she did.
She's second year of college at this stage.
I know. So she's a 2 on the Enneagram, but I think she might be a wing 3. I'm not sure, because like when she sets a goal, she's like, I'm just going to go get my real estate license. And during the school year, she takes the 75-hour course online. And then in January, between break, that next year, she gets her real estate license. Yeah. And then she goes on to get her, so that was her New Jersey real estate license. And then she's like, I'm going to get my Delaware real estate license because dad has businesses in Delaware too. So she's currently chasing that. She's had a great month this month. And also working for you. So that goal setting portion has just been so beneficial to us as a family, to be able to get away, just connect, talk about where we are, what failures or regrets we have from the previous year, what we're going to change. And then we check in on each other throughout the year to see how we're doing. And it's been beneficial.
We try to do that. So mid-year we'll do kind of a long dinner, right? We'll go like to a restaurant that's got a separate room or something and spend 3 or 4 hours together, a mid-year check-in. We try to do once a month dinner together, just doing regular check-ins. And then on a day by day, minute by minute, we've just got the 1 to 10 line, right? Which is, how you doing 1 to 10? Because we know how each one of us is generally functions. I think most of us are usually somewhere between a 6.5 and 8.5, in any given point in time. But so when I ask one of the kids or they ask me how you doing, and it's a 5, it's like, okay. Well, that warrants going a little bit deeper. Let's talk about that. And then identifying some of that stuff. But that gives us kind of minute by minute or daily check-ins, monthly check-ins, semi-annual, and then the annual meeting of working together and really goal setting. And I think the book thing is going to be really expensive for us this year. We're shooting this at the end of 2023, and I think that when the numbers fall, you and I are going to be writing some very large checks.
I know, because CJ is currently, as we're doing this, sitting at a coffee shop writing up all our book reports.
Yeah. So, and to be clear for those of you who don't know, so we started a long time ago paying our kids to read books from our book list. So Meg and I have between us, we've read well over 1,000 books and continue to read 30 to 50 books a year each. And so, we continue to cultivate that book list. And so the kids have to read, if they're going to stay on the team, if they're going to stay on Team Wagner and keep doing the things we're doing together, they got to read 2 books and write 2 2-page book reports, 1 for each one. But beyond that, we will pay them $300 per book report for up to 30 books. So each of the kids can make up to $9,000. I am 1099ing them for that, which gives them 1099 income, which means now they're self-employed, which means they have a business and tax deductions. And so they have to think about that at ages 19 and 22. So that is all part of what we're doing intentionally with the kids. And, $300 a book is a high number, but ultimately we've gotten to that number because you have to, the kids could just go pick up a few more hours at work, right? So if when our kids were 15, 16, 17 years old, if they went and got another shift at $10 an hour or $12 an hour working at their job, you have to pay them more for doing the book than they're getting paid at work. And so $300 a book is where we're negotiated at right now. We've been there for a few years though. So, but, and I don't get paid. That's right. You and I don't get paid. Well, we get paid differently.
I know. It's all good. It's a great life that we're leading.
Yeah. Wow. And it's been, the kids are part of what we're doing. We've set the foundation. I do think this school, look, you said you can put on 60 pounds. I put on 85 pounds during those school years. We're both kind of on the way back down now. We've made some lifestyle changes this year that are moving us in the right direction on that front, on the weight front, on the health journey front. But, it really is, it's been an amazing ride so far to be able to learn the things we've learned, We've had, and, I've mentioned a couple of people today who are important parts of that journey. Brad Harris was an early one. Ward Keever was a huge one for me. Roxana Chavan, instrumental in your early days with Herbalife. And we've had some other people who have been influential. Ultimately, and then today I've got people like Brad Harris and Sean Sparks at a company named Triad, Brent O'Mara, Wade Balin, and Todd Feltz, who are guys who run Wealth Plan Group out in Omaha, Nebraska. So we've got some people that are around us today who are doing things, who are challenging us. And so, I do think one of the things that, and this is on both sides. So I think that a core principle for us has been to continue to try to outgrow our mentors. Mm-hmm. So learn what we have to learn from these people, have them, and it's not, hopefully it's a give take relationship. Hopefully we're adding value to their lives along the journey too, but there's people that come into our lives for a season to teach us something. It's our job to learn those lessons and then begin to move on our own journey, on our own path. And then we also need to recognize that of the people on our team, because if we're going to keep exceptional people on our teams, we have to create two things. We have to create an environment where they're being led and they're being mentored, which means, they could treat us the same way. If we're not growing, if we're not developing and advancing in our own ideology and mental mindset, then they're going to outgrow us and they won't want to stay on our team. It's so crucial for us to go back to that early conversation. It's so crucial for us to not create the law of the cap for the people on our teams, to help them continue to be envisioning more, because that's how we retain the right to continue to be their leader and to continue to we earn the right to continue to have them on our team, because we don't impose a cap on their growth opportunity. And where that really hits home for us is our kids, because our kids have read so many books so much earlier. They're so much wiser, grounded, more grounded than we were at the age that they're at. So much more vision oriented than we were, that I do think that, that pushes you and I to continue becoming better versions of ourselves, simply because, if we want to keep our own kids on the team, we got to keep growing, because we got to be ahead of them. So,
yep.
Good stuff. Where do you want to go from here, May? Both on this podcast, that's a small question, but the big question is, 10 years from now, where do you want to be? You're going to be 60 in 10 years.
I would like to have some grandkids.
Okay.
I see us just having freedom to, we want to live, we want to live in Italy for a month. We can. I see us being involved in more ministry as far as the charities that we're involved in. We have some lifelong giving goals that we've set, and that's going to mean, really getting to know different charities and other areas that we can give and be philanthropic with. Yeah. And so I think that's exciting. All that's involved in that, we're very much relational people. We thrive on good relationships. And so I look at all that and I think, there's going to be some really great relationships that come from just setting a goal of giving away, X amount of dollars over a lifetime. And so, I look forward to that. In 10 years, I feel like, there's a lot of people who haven't come into our life yet that are really going to be huge influences on us.
Yeah.
And that's exciting, more people to learn and grow with. And hopefully with everything that we've been through, we're better now, to be able to be in those types of relationships, as far as, and we've learned a lot about just being in control of our own schedules and in our own kind of like how we spend our time. and making decisions around, should I say yes or no to this? Is this, and one of the questions I ask now after being through all that is this something that someone else could do? Or is this something that requires a skill set that I may only hold?
Yeah.
And if it's something that someone else can do, the answer is going to be no, I'm not going to do that right now. I don't feel like that's the best investment of my time and resources. And I feel like someone else could do that job.
Yeah.
And it used not to be that way. And so going forward, I see us, being able to excel even faster because we're applying our abilities and skills to the areas where we are the best fit for that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, you have developed a real giftedness and expertise at planning events. And so whether it's our holiday open house that gets so exceptionally run and we have close to 200 people come through, or whether it's, in February, you're going to be running an event for one of the organizations that is near and dear to our heart. And I think it's basically a final night party for 1,000 people in 2 ballrooms. So, I mean, that's, and I think, this week you've been saying that one's a little overwhelming. But, the trunk or treat at our church that you help organize and other events, that, helping us plan trips at Visionary for the team and those kinds of things. You've developed a real giftedness in those areas. And again, a lot of that talent developed kind of in the farm league of Salem County Christian Academy, right? So where we were doing events for dozens or hundreds of people, now it's, hundreds or thousands of people. So it's, every step on our journey should be building towards something, and we're going to make mistakes. We want to learn lessons. The crucial thing is to be able to take the time. And you go back to those early days of Herbalife, but journaling, mentally or physically journaling, being able to rehearse those mistakes, having communication and environment with our kids where we're saying, hey, let's talk about areas where we blew it. Let's talk about areas that we messed things up or missed an opportunity, because that's wisdom that we now have. I know on the team at Visionary, we've had a couple of times where somebody's made a mistake and they'll come to my office and they'll say something like, I understand that, if you're going to have to fire me over this. And I'm like, first of all, did you commit this mistake maliciously on purpose? That's the first question. And there's never been a time where we've had somebody who maliciously, intentionally did something on purpose to damage our business or to make a mistake that hurt a client or something. And so if the answer is no to that intentional and malicious part, then my answer is always, why on earth would I fire you? You now have wisdom and institutional knowledge that this organization will affect and never make that mistake again. So, and we do that within our family. What are the biggest mistakes we've made? And some of that, I know in my relationship with Bryce and I have had some major moments when he was in middle school and that kind of thing where we had major conflict. And it's like, okay, we have learned some things through counseling, through going to counseling together, through working things out where, like, Bryce and I try not to tackle hard conversations late at night because he and I are both emotionally spent, and that's when sparks fly between us. But, and until we went and sat with a counselor and said, oh, can you see a pattern here that the last 6 or 7 times you have had fights, they've been after 10 o'clock at night. It's, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't talk after 10 o'clock at night unless things are really, really good. And so then we can put some stopgaps in place and those kinds of things. But I think those kinds of lessons, the ability to accumulate those lessons, and then canonize them so that they can be disseminated across the organization, whether that organization is the family, a company, a ministry, but being able to share those lessons is so crucial. So, and I agree, with you, May, more freedom to travel. You and I want to see most of the corners of the earth before we leave this mortal plane, as it were. Um, but also, our goals are not, and we say this a lot too. It's more important what we leave in our kids and what we leave to our kids. And
Mhm.
so, we want to leave them the lessons. We want to leave them the leadership, um, lessons and mindset. We want to teach them to be entrepreneurs. I think one of the biggest breakthroughs you and I ever had was when it dawned on us that the U.S. tax code is actually built for business owners. I think that was a major mindset shift that,
Yeah.
most people work for W-2 income. And as soon as you can flip to 1099 or, other kinds of revenue that aren't W-2, you unlock so many opportunities within the tax code to just give Uncle Sam less. That it's just incredible, and being able to pass that on to our kids, because I think our kids have absolutely got that. They've got that, sunk into their bones at a very early age. So we're excited to see what that does over time. But I think my goals are more about, what can we give. We've set a lifetime giving goal that's a really, wildly outside the nine dots and way more than we ever thought we'd be able to dream about. And it's, but the journey is okay. The way things are today, we would never be able to achieve that goal. Right. So you set the goal, not knowing how you're going to get there. And
Right. And it's not just about the goal, though. It's about the people that we're going to become
yeah,
when we get to that goal.
yeah. And that goes back to that goes back to all the way back to Jim
Mhm.
Rohn, right?
Yeah.
You don't become a millionaire for the sake of having $1 million. You become a millionaire because of the person you have to become to
Mhm.
have $1 million. Because once you become the person that has $1 million, then the $1 million can burn to the ground. Somebody can take it away from you.
Yeah.
Circumstances, situations can take it away from you, and you will go back and build it 5 times faster the
Mhm.
next time. And so I think the task for you and I is to become the best versions of ourselves and continue to take others along and challenge them. Do what Brad Harris did for us, envision people for more, envision people for more of themselves, and more, for their families, more impact, more opportunity to leave a positive dent in the universe because we were here.
Mhm.
And that's in doing that. When we do that, we will accelerate good in the universe. We will accelerate wealth in our family and in our spheres of influence.
Mhm.
And we will accelerate benevolence, philanthropy, and mission and purpose in the
Yeah.
people around us. So, um, well, May, I'm grateful to be on this journey. You are still not just the best I could get. You are more than I ever could have hoped or dreamed for. And I'm grateful to be on this 30-year journey with you. I'm looking forward to celebrating you in 30 years with you in 2024 in
Mhm.
some pretty amazing backdrops. We've got some travel plans for this year, and I'm looking forward to spending that time growing with you and learning to envision more for the decade or 2 or 3 that we got left. We always finish the podcast with one question. What's one thing that you would leave our guests with, our listeners with, on the topic of envisioning more from your experience?
Um, oof. I think that it's an exercise to start dreaming, right? To figure out what envision more looks like. And that's the first question that you have to ask yourself. And then goal setting is so important. Even if you don't reach the goal that you set out to attain, you're so much closer.
Mm,
And the person that you become while you're stretching for that goal is better. And so I feel like you can't lose, even if you don't reach your goal, you still, gain so much in the process. And so I would just encourage you that, if you have something in the back of your mind that you're looking to do or you've thought about doing, just set the goal. And, we set some weight loss goals this year, and I don't think we're going to hit the number that we thought we were going to hit. But man, our health is so much better when we get
mhm.
our blood work back. It's, wow, look at look at all the things that have changed. And so we're becoming better people and stretching for the goal.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you for sharing today. Thank you for being here for the Envision More podcast and listening to our story with myself, Wayne Wagner, President of Visionary Wealth Management, May Wagner, Managing Partner, Managing Member for Claronomia Ventures and Visionary Properties One, and. So all of
Wagner
the things
Inc.
That, Wagner Inc. There you go. Thanks for being with us today. And I hope that this has been helpful for you in terms of helping you envision more for your family. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Envision More podcast with Wayne Wagner Jr. of Visionary Wealth Management. We hope you were encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. If you want to dig deeper into the show notes or Wayne's work at Visionary, you can find us at envisionmore.com. That's Envision with a Z. Advisory services are provided through Wealth Plan Investment Management. Wealth Plan Investment Management and Visionary Wealth Management are separate entities. The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Thanks for listening.